Well, hey, folks. You've tuned into Pacific Ocean Asia. Would you like to know what was rated at 2017 most snobbiest / pretentious cities in the U.S.? Starting at number 1 is San Francisco. Number 2 is New York City. 3 is Boston. 4 is Minneapolis, St. Paul. 5 tied is Santa Fe and Seattle. 7 is Chicago. 8 is Providence, Rhode Island. 9 is Washington, D.C. 10 is Charleston, South Carolina. And we have 11, Portland, Oregon. 12 is Savannah, Georgia. 13th is Nashville. Tied for 14th is Kansas City, Missouri, and Philadelphia. 16 is L.A. 17 is Houston. 18 is Portland, Maine. 19 is Austin, Texas. And San Juan, Puerto Rico. Interesting. Let me click this beast off. Seems to be frozen. Notice in that list that most of those are blue cities. I've had this discussion with people, and people don't like it when I say this. But the rudest cities are always where the largest number of Democrats live. That's a fact. The rudest cities. I read Reddit ranked Denver as the 4th most pretentious city in the United States. Some liberal responded saying, I live in Orange County, and I'm from Denver, and I can't believe the scumbag douchebag, and he used all kinds of profanity, saying that whoever wrote this is dumb, and I thought, you haven't met me, buddy. I agree with the article 100%. I don't care what anybody says. Liberalism affects manners, affects etiquette, affects how women view men, affects how people view traditional marriage. Politics, or your liberal viewpoint, is going to change the way you are and the way you react to the universe around you. People get mad when I say this. I get extreme consternation when I make mention that I don't buy the lie of evolution. And the Democrats love pushing that. They own and manipulate the educational system across the United States. And to be sure, a university anywhere in the world gives you a free passport globally, because the universities are all in the same socialist, godless, atheistic, Christ-denying agenda. Take, for instance, all the stuff that's going on in the United States right now. Some woman got on a post complaining that men refer to women as, check out those hot girls. She's offended because we use the term girls, and we're not meaning little kids, and she didn't say that. It's almost like women in the U.S. are trying to deny the fact that they're females. I saw this years ago when you met the Tom girl who wore a baseball hat, and then the baseball hat was put on backwards, and then they weren't shaving their armpits, and they had BO just as bad as a man. But now we see so many women trying to act like that our existence, us males, specifically white males, is totally unnecessary for the survival of the human race. You go to Sweden, you have feminist Swedish women complaining about a man sitting on an empty seat in a bus and his legs are spread open. His balls aren't hanging out, he's got his pants on, but he sits comfortable. That's called manspreading, and that's a big no-no now. The feminists are offended. Wherever liberalism proliferates, freedom has a chain around it. I said in one of my videos I love listening to Rush Limbaugh, and it's true. He's unrefuted. People criticize him, they don't like him, but not one person can say that what he's saying is a lie. And I'm going to say it again. If you're speaking truth, you most likely will not be popular. You will not be on the evening news with accolades. You will not win an Oscar, an enemy. You win enemies. Emmys, Grammys, Pulitzers, whatever. So then I looked up some other stuff. What are the cheapest towns, the lowest cost of living, 2017? Fort Wayne, Indiana, number 1. Evansville, Indiana. South Bend, Indiana. Topeka, Kansas, no thanks. Toledo, Ohio. Wichita, Kansas. Akron, Ohio, no thanks. Lived there, done that, bought the t-shirt. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Davenport, Iowa. Springfield, Illinois. Rochester, Minnesota. Dayton, Ohio. Springfield, Missouri. Wichita Falls in Texas. Kansas City, Kansas side. Odessa, Texas. Cleveland. Indianapolis, Indiana, of course. Abilene, Texas. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Montgomery, Alabama. Lansing, Michigan. Des Moines, lowest cost of living. Brownsville, which is Texas. Warren, Michigan. That's 25. Now let's pull up the worst places to live in the United States. The worst cities for middle-class families. These are the 10 worst places to live in America for 2018. By the way, I was shocked to learn this. We have a new boss, a new terminal manager, a black gentleman that I respect. He's been in the transportation industry, mostly with the trucking aspect, for 30 plus years. He came from Memphis. He told me Memphis is the highest crime rate in the country. I did not know that. The worst places to live. Now, remember that on this list, one of these cities was the cheapest to live. That was Dayton, Ohio, which ranks the worst at number 3. But the worst in order from number 1 to 10. Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Missouri, Dayton, Ohio, Detroit. That's a no-brainer there. Detroit is a toilet bowl. San Bernardino, California, Cleveland, Ohio, another cheap city to live in. I have a friend who lives in Cleveland who's teaching English in China, and he will tell you Cleveland sucks. Brownsville, Texas, Tucson, Arizona, St. Louis, Missouri, and Mobile, Alabama. I always like to point out that some of the worst places to live are often loaded with liberals. Let's see. Let's have some fun. The 10 most dangerous cities in the U.S. Forbes magazine. Let's see what they have to say. Continue. I don't want this stuff. Detroit makes number 1. As it shows burnout, smoldering buildings on Hell Night. Isn't that fun? That's where they go on Halloween and set all the buildings on fire. Great place to live. And then Flint, was it Flint, Michigan? Was just rated as the worst. Okay, we're not going to do this site because it's got too many advertisements and videos loading that it's interfering with my ability to do anything. Well, let's see what we can find here. Let's try the 25 most dangerous cities. Wall Street, 24/7. Let's see what number 1 is. Detroit is number 1 in this study by the Wall Street Journal. St. Louis, Missouri dials in at number 2. Memphis, Tennessee is number 3 in this study. And number 4, where are we here? Number 4 is Baltimore, Maryland. You remember the riots there a few years ago, the black issue? Rockford, Illinois. Yeah, great places. Let's see what we can find for the most friendliest cities. See if I can get to the right screen. This keyboard has about had it. The 10 friendliest cities in the United States: Asheville, North Carolina; Nashville, Tennessee; Key West, Florida; Jackson Hole, Wyoming; Fort Worth, Texas; New Orleans; Telluride, Colorado. That's in the southwestern corner of the state. Oh, this is going from 10 backwards. Number 3 is San Antonio. Number 2 is Savannah, Georgia. And 1 is Charleston, South Carolina. The 10 least friendliest cities in the U.S. I want you to pay attention to this. Every single one of these is a liberal, strong haven. Miami's in at number 10. Wilmington, Delaware is number 9. The Hamptons, New York, of course, that's where all the media mogul clowns live. Dan Rather and friends. Detroit, New Haven, Connecticut, Los Angeles, Atlantic City, New Jersey, Hartford, Connecticut, Oakland, California, and Newark, New Jersey. Whenever I hear the term Newark, New Jersey, all I can think of is Royal Toilet Flush. Anytime I think of New Jersey, most of the state. And it's shocking me because when you talk about New Jersey, it's called the Garden State. And New Jersey actually has some beautiful pastoral dairy farm countryside. But you always focus in on the toilet cities. People don't get it. But when you look at the cities that supposedly care for the underdog, the blacks, the Latinos, you look at the Democrats that are supposed to be the superior, we're educated, we got college degrees. They bragged about this in the last election. One of the leading Democrats referred to the Hispanic community as Taco Bell voters. The Hispanic community obviously missed that clip because they still rallied around the Democratic Party. Does the Democratic Party actually meet the needs legitimately of other people? And the answer is no. They meet the needs of illegals. They meet the needs of scofflaws. People who play fast and loose with the laws of the land. You come over here illegal, you get a welcome wagon bouquet, a care package from the Democrats. It's disgusting. The worst cities, the least friendliest cities. Miami's a Latina melting pot. I read an article earlier today that a guy noticed when he went to Florida that the Hispanics were the most rude of all the people. I can say the same thing here in Denver, Colorado. They're just about the worst for manners, etiquette, and respect that we, white people, have a right to exist. In Denver, Colorado, I noticed that a lot of the Hispanic neighborhoods have bars over their front door and over their windows. And do you want to know what the population is of the Latino neighborhoods? There's no white people, no Asians. They're Hispanics. Why then the bars and the locks and the alarms on all their cars that go off all night long because the stupid thing malfunctions? And 15,000 barking chihuahuas and a whole bunch of noise. Because the Hispanic community doesn't even trust each other. They steal from their own. They take advantage of their own. It's sad, but it's true. Not all Hispanics are this way. I met many Hispanics that I deeply respect and adore. Liberal politics determines the well-being of a place, or rather the unhealthiness of a place. Let me say that again. Depending on your political leanings, when the majority is either conservative or the majority is either liberal, it will determine either the health or the sickness of a place. Let's talk about Detroit. Detroit is automakers central. Pro-union. Support your local. The unions always go Democrat. Well, when the boys in Michigan didn't feel that $25, $30 an hour was enough for assembling cars, way back in the day when $25 an hour was a huge wage, plus benefits, plus retirement, the corporate powers that be said, shoot, we can go to Mexico, make this thing cheaper. Did the Democrat Party stand up for that? No. Detroit is a testimony of excess. The Democrats, the ones that are the environmentalists, the ones that are the save a tree, hug a tree, save the spotted owl, but kill your baby. All one need to do is read about Lake Erie. And look at pictures of Lake Erie in the 50s. It was almost an orange color. So many pollutants entered that lake. And let me make it very clear, that was not done by the conservatives. That if you were to track some things in this country, it might shock you to find that liberals were at the head of waste, filth, pollution. And now all of a sudden they're on this bandwagon to create all these laws against all this. Ironically enough, they're punishing people who can't afford a Prius. California made everybody get rid of their old cars. At one point in Los Angeles, cash for used cars. They were buying people's cars out and sending them to the crusher. I always maintain the Democratic Party is hypocritical. There's no doubt in my mind. And I've beaten evolution like a dead horse. Evolution is not a teaching of hope. It is not a thing that enables people to achieve greater for the good of humanity. Case in point, look at Richard Dawkins, the God delusion. The only one that's deluded is him. He gives not one argument, but it's just put downs. Isn't that the way trolls are? Snipers, cheap shots. They won't come out with a video and say, I disagree with this guy because blah, blah, blah. On the contrary, it's many Christians that actually come back with facts as to why they don't believe evolution. Something as simple as the second law of thermodynamics. Evolutionists say that everything's evolving upward. They shoot themselves in the butt. The second law of thermodynamics, which was established by science and scientists, was that everything's wearing down, death, decay, bloodshed, blah, blah, blah. We're not evolving. Humans are not getting better. And we can talk about the Victorian era where people acted prude and stuff, but we've got some things going on now that didn't go on back then. The proliferation of pornography today is off the charts. Organized crime is no less than it was in the days of Al Capone. If we've gotten better, why aren't these cities losing their crime rate? If people are evolving, how come we have more black males in prisons that are drug lords and drug dealers? I have done looking and reading and checking, and I've come to the conclusion that any place in America is as good as bad as the next. But I can say that if you're in a typically stronghold of Democrat liberals, in some ways your quality of life will not be so great. You'll start seeing a lack of manners. You'll start seeing a lack of care. You'll see more rudeness on the roadways. You see more rudeness in neighborhoods. And the awful C word, crime, goes up. I thought the liberals claimed that they were the enlightened ones. They have the college degrees. The feminists are enlightened. Has any of you taken the time to look at the face of a feminist? Body language says everything. If I had the technical wherewithal to post in a studio showing different facial expressions, I often think, half of these publications by the liberal left ought to be titled The Angry Democrat. You look at the average feminist in the United States, and the thing that they radiate all the time is uptight. And if you want to talk pretentious, liberals are number one. How are you today? I'm doing well. No, you're not. I remember when I lived in Minnesota, somebody dared to sport in Virginia, Minnesota, an Iron Range town, which is liberal to the core. There's a bumper sticker on the back of a Dodge pickup. It says, "Annoy a Democrat. Smile, work hard, be happy." I laughed. How true. I noticed in Denver here, I notice that many people see me as a free spirit. And when I come into close proximity with people who are not free spirits, me just being me, I get dirty looks, rude comments by people that don't even know me. There's an old saying, misery loves company. Look at what the Democrats have been doing for 1 year plus of the election of Donald Trump. Whining and crying and sore losers. Whether you think Trump's a good president or not really doesn't matter. He won the election. Because the Democrats failed to take into account that there's a whole bunch of people in this country that don't agree with them and their viewpoints. People want to argue that Hillary won the popular vote. Okay, but we have a college electoral system. How many times did the other side win the popular vote and the conservatives lost? The reason for the college electoral system is simple. Now, I don't know the actual roots of it, but I believe it has something to do with the fact you go to Washington State, you go to Minnesota. Washington State, the biggest city, is Seattle. Large populace. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, large populace. Denver, Colorado. Most of your conservatives are rural. And the numbers aren't there to match the liberal, gargantuan, swallow up everything cities or metro areas. If we were left with the popular vote, the big liberal cities would win every single time. But I'll tell you something, even Pacific had released a video on his Facebook 2 years ago. It was titled, "Donald Trump Will Not Win." And my basis was the fact that Obama got voted in twice, comfortably so. My basis was looking here in Colorado and looking at the growing number of people that were pro-marijuana, pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, pro-evolution. People here are getting vocal. I was in a sauna one day. a young white woman was sitting in there, and there was an older gentleman, and he was having a conversation with her. And he was talking about his eyesight. He had some problems, and he went into a surgery. And he suddenly says something that caught my attention. He says, "It just amazes me the intricate detail of the eye and the way God made it." She gets off of the bench, and she goes, "Actually, it's just so awesome, the randomness of evolution and how that happened." She walked out the door, and I looked at the guy. I said, isn't that something that somebody can actually come right back and say evolution is responsible for the complexity of the eye? He goes, "I wanted to say something, but I thought probably better not." I said, "We're in Colorado. Better to keep your mouth shut." They're not going to listen. They're going to argue. They're going to brand you. They're going to hate. I said this, my first video back here on Pacific Ocean Asia, the hatred from the left. It is a real dynamic. How many public death threats did you hear by celebrities made towards Barack Obama in the White House after he got elected not once but twice? I heard none. I heard numerous by people of influence in pop culture and entertainment industry regarding Donald Trump's election and win. You have to understand the pussy march, where they wore the pink pussy hats. Sorry to be rude, but that's just an example of vaginas out of control in America. That women now can just say and do whatever they want, virtually unchecked. But Rush Limbaugh made a good point. These people, these women, they did not go out of their way to buy a plane ticket to go and protest. Rush said they already bought plane tickets because they all assumed Hillary would win and they were coming to celebrate. Now they were angry because they wasted a flight fare. So somebody got smart, rallied them all together and said, "Let's do a pussy march protesting him." That made perfect sense. Aren't you glad that there's a whole bunch of vain, feminist, man-hating, valueless women out there that can afford to book a flight to go to Washington, D.C. to rail and yell against Mr. Trump? Isn't that awesome that our country's so good about being wise with the resources that all these spoiled brat, pampered little narcissistic females can spend that kind of money to go on a flight? Well, they didn't want to waste their ticket. That tells you about the arrogance. It's like when the people said God himself couldn't sink the Titanic. They played a soundbite of every person that said Donald Trump is not going to be the next president. Donald Trump is not going to win. From Barack Obama to Matt Lauer to all the clowns in the major networks. Not one of them came back and issued a public apology. Not one of them said, I put my personal opinion into this and I shouldn't have. The voters have spoken. It's a done deal. Nope. They continued generating even more fake news. The Russians stole the elections. The Russians did it. The Russians did it. And even after this investigation of an indictment against Russians, the leading FBI people said there was no evidence that the Americans had any part of this. There was no collusion. That the Russians were doing this, yes. And then it came out that they've been doing this for a long time. BT, before Trump. It's just like I said in a video. Al Gore ran for president. And he had the Confederate flag. And on one bar it said Al Gore and then the vice president and the year. Not one Democrat outcry. Shortly after Trump gets in office, or slightly before, the liberals are screaming and yelling about Robert E. Lee and all the Confederate stuff in the South. I did a little reading on Robert E. Lee. He was not for slavery, in fact tried to help save some of the black slaves' lives. That you don't hear on the evening news. I used to ignorantly believe, wow, why are we supporting this racist symbol that Georgia calls their state flag? The Confederate flag was not a slavery flag. It's just that it flew during the time all this was going on, and they therefore feel it's guilt by association. As a Christian, one of the phrases I learned over and over by other Christians I grew up to respect said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If something's evil, get rid of it. But if there's something good and it has nothing to do with all this evil, then enjoy. And it was okay for these clowns to go in and vandalize statues that had been there 200 years from the Civil War era. It was okay for them to go crazy and AWOL. And I did a video at one point saying, you know, how long do we let these activists dictate what we're going to do? And I struggle, because democracy is a real thing. And I believe in the right to expression of speech and to protest. But there's a part of me that's iron-fisted and says, when these guys start smashing things, call in the National Guard and fire them all in the butt. Pump their butt full of lead. Say, we're not putting up with this. You want to start trashing everything? You're done. No court hearing. You're done. My favorite scene from Home Alone. You got to the count of 10 to get your big, ugly, yellow keister out of here before I pump it full of lead. But America's too soft on the scofflaws. Instead, they're busy picking at little old ladies and 3-year-old white kids in an airport thinking they might be a risk to terrorism. Compliments of the TSA. While Muslims walk in wholesale, board flights, take over the flight with box cutters and fly into our buildings. But I'll add something else. For you conspiracy theorists, you'll love this one. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Pacific has since changed his view about 9/11. I watch video footage. I like disasters. I don't know why I've had a fascination with disasters. What caused it? How did the building come down? How did it collapse? The Titanic when it sank? All this stuff. There's a fascination, not a morbid. I'm not happy about the death and the destruction. But I like to see what the ship can handle for stresses. I like to see what a building does when this happens. I like when they load test bridges. Anybody remember that? Was it Multnomah, Oregon? The Astoria Bridge or whatever the bridge was called. And the wind is blowing that bridge and it's buckling and there's a 40s car sitting there and the bridge just suddenly goes. Building 7, WTC, World Trade Center. Everybody's focused on the 2 towers and the Pentagon and a field in Pennsylvania. And about evening fall in Colorado, or late afternoon, I'm watching the TV in Building 7 in perfect, programmed, demolition explosive manner rides down smoothly like a frickin' elevator. You see it start to heave. No building comes down perfectly in its footprint unless its controlled explosives detonated at just the right supports. It is an art. It is a talent. It is an engineering marvel. And the reason they do that is you don't want a building coming down when a street is 50, 60, 100 feet wide and all that rubble is going to cascade into the lobby of another high-rise. They don't tear down a building one piece at a time. You can't. It would take forever with jackhammers to piece it down. So they implode the building. They told us that the World Trade Center number 7 was burning all day long. It is interesting to note that later on, the Pentagon or the CIA, somebody had a whole bunch of records in that building. In fact, it was said that a lot of those records had to do with Hillary and Bill Clinton. My question is, Did somebody come in and put these explosives in place? Did somebody know that the hijackers were going to do this? I don't know. But for Building 7 to come down as perfectly as it did, I have more questions than answers. When we finally learned the staggering phrase, fake news, we started to ask ourselves, it seemed like America got together. Remember Democrats and Republicans on the Capitol building staying together the day of God Bless America? It was electrifying. Democrats and Republicans saying God Bless America were in unison. 2 days later, Bush said Islam is a religion of peace. Facepalm. Bush, you haven't read the Quran, have you? Slay the infidels wheresoever you find them. All that convert not to Allah, slay, kill. Read it yourself, people. Don't believe Pacific. Islam is a false religion. Islam does call for the destruction of non-Islamics. Yes, it does. It's all in their book. The Democrats have been allowing refugees and people not only with a counter-American view, but religious views that call for our demise, that refer to America as the great Satan. They come over here and attend our universities, buy our cars, buy our homes, all the meanwhile plotting to destroy some of us. In the 1990s, Desert Storm, the American troops went over to fight in Kuwait. The Arabs made it very clear to them, you cannot have a Bible, you cannot have this, you cannot have that. If I was the commander-in-chief, I would have said, Arabs, if you want the help of the United States, don't you forbid them the right to practice their religion and free speech. And if you can't do that, you fight the war yourself, homeboys. Why is it that Muslims can come over here and build mosques and plot our demise and hate us under the Constitution, the freedom of religions, but yet you go to Iran and Kuwait and others and you try to set up a Christian church? No. The hypocrisy of the liberal left is a capital H. But I always maintain this goes back to something bigger than Democrat versus Republican. This goes back to a foundational belief. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If your viewpoint doesn't start with that as your foundation, nothing good can come out of your viewpoint. Nothing. I realize there are Christians who act bad. I realize that I've acted bad many times. That doesn't deny who God is. It just amplifies how sinful we are. That we're all guilty, every single one of us, of holding somebody. Wow, look what he or she just did. Oh my gosh. Be careful. You live in a glass house and you're throwing stones at the glass house across the street, one might bounce back and shatter your windows. It happens all the time. The Democrats are finger pointing at Donald Trump's pussy speech on a bus, grabbing female crotches, etc. And Hillary Clinton's friends in good old boys club with Weinstein, who was guilty of tons of sexual atrocities. The 3 women that came forward accusing Trump of sexual inappropriateness, it was found out that one of them was paid by Hillary Clinton and her campaign to lie. The other 2 was found out they also lied. And in fairness to Bill Cosby and all these others, I'm not saying they didn't do it. People of power usually do this crap. We're going to talk about the women's role in this too. That cannot be ignored or let go. Bill Cosby, Bush, all these politicians, 20, 30 years after the fact, all these women come forward. Why now? It's all political, my friend. Bill Cosby's getting older. These women are getting more wrinkles. They're not hotties anymore. Now they want some money out of the deal. I'm not denying Bill Cosby didn't play games and get a woman drunk and feel her breasts. I'm not denying that at all. Men are men. Doesn't make it right, but men do those sorts of things sometimes. And the thing that bothers me is I can almost bet you that some of the women egged some of this on as well. Oh, wow, Pacific, you really are a chauvinist. No, I know women. Women like to get close to prestige. And this, when a man has a lot of money, all of a sudden, they really like and respect him. Weinstein, Cosby, Chief Justice Thomas More, who ran in the state of Alabama and lost the election. And he lost the election because he was tarnished by accusations and allegations. It's interesting. Anybody knows about Chief Justice Thomas More? He lost his job as the state of Alabama Supreme Court Justice for the state of Alabama. He lost his job because he brought in a 2,500-pound stone with the Ten Commandments inscribed on it. The local atheists started screaming and yelling that that's not separation of church and state. The other justices said, Thomas, get that out of here so we can shut this down. Just get it. They respected Judge Moore. They respected his fair hand in governing. He didn't slap people on the wrist for repeat offenders. He dealt with things. He refused. He lost his job. I wrote the Berean Call, a publication I subscribed to many years ago, and I should get it remailed to my house. It's great. Dave Hunt started it. He's now deceased. And I think it's T.A. Mahone now that's the other editor on there. They talk about biblical issues, and they talk about a lot of the things confronting the church, where the church is capitulating, compromising, etc., etc. But Dave Hunt took the stand that Justice Moore did the right thing by standing for the stone, and I wrote Dave, and I said, Dave, I agree with you on everything, but this one I have to part ways because he had more influence as a righteous judge with these juvenile delinquents and these people coming in, and he's tripping over a stone. The Ten Commandments of God stand whether the stone's removed from a courthouse or not. Dave Hunt wrote me back and said, you do bring up a good point, Mr. Nelson. Thank you. I respect Mr. Hunt. To hear about all these sexual allegations, I thought, more? No. Then you start listening to what they're saying. It's like, uh-oh, he may be guilty. The penis causes an awful lot of problems. It's blind. It works only on feelings, not logic. Come on now, laugh with me. The penis is dumb. It doesn't operate cerebrally at all. It's not designed to. This has to control this that controls that between your legs. I've done my own dumb regret things with women in the past. We get lonely. We want company. Somebody looks good. Somebody's putting all the right moves. And I want to say something about the women bringing forth the accusations. Why were they so quiet for so long? Feminism has been alive and well for several decades now. Where were these women 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when they would have had every woman's group and advocacy group supporting them? Women today complain about a wage discrepancy. Yeah, there is a wage discrepancy. Women are making $100,000 a year to sit on a computer and make flaky stuff, while the rest of us got to work our butts off with a pittance. No, there's no wage discrepancy. That's a farce. Look what I'm doing. I'm checking my... One of my followers texted me, great video about the last 3 years of your life. Wow, ooh, I'm going to have to read this later. This is a novel. I'll get back to you, sir. I have tried to be as objective as I can. But the last election showed me who the real enemies are. Liberals control the media. Liberals control the entertainment industry, Hollywood. You're going to hate me for this, most of the rock music culture is liberal to the core. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, abortions, illicit sex, whatever you want to do, man. Feels good, do it. And we found ourselves getting mad when Madonna made a statement and this person said, well, I'm not going to listen to her music anymore. But the problem is we did, and we bought it, and we liked it. And the sad fact is we need to start analyzing some of these people. Why are we paying them? I remember years ago, a woman that I knew back in the 80s wrote the music band Journey. Said, I'm a Christian and I love Journey's music. I have a question about the scarab beetle on all of your album covers. Are you guys into Satanism? What does it stand for? Could you please enlighten me? I read that letter. It was from the woman who answers the fan club mail. An angry, hateful woman. Wasted no time from the band Journey. I am so sick of you Christians thinking everything is satanic. Blah, 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 blah. No explanation to the letter. About the scarab beetle, nothing. She had asked in the letter, this woman I knew, is the band into Egyptology? Because that's what the scarab is from. She got a nasty, hate-filled letter that didn't address the issue, basically saying Christians are a bunch of dimwits. And that's what you get with Mr. Dawkins in his God delusion. That's what you get with the plethora of trolls all over social media. And they are everywhere, folks. And if you notice, while Facebook is censoring and shutting down accounts, the trolls go on unabated on Google, on YouTube, social media, Twitter. None of those organizations does anything to get rid of them. Virtually. I thought liberals were against bullying. It's taught in every public school. We don't tolerate bullying. Look at the behavior of the liberals during the last election. Going to other countries. I'm here to represent the United States, but not this president. He's not my president. Wow, woman, you said something so profound. Not my president. Not the mama. Not the mama. Anybody remember dinosaurs? It's sad that when I, as a man, can look at these women making a complete, embarrassing, vaginal fool out of themselves, and they don't see that. That's how blind most Western chicks are today. That not one person addressed the issue of Barack Obama's debt that he himself added to the country more than all the other previous presidents combined. But of course, that was all Bush's fault. That the Democrats are accountable to nobody. I don't hate people that are a Democrat. There's a woman at the sauna. I chatted with her when the election came. She was in the sauna one day, or the hot tub, and I said, hey, how are you? She goes, not good. I said, why? What's going on? She goes, did you see the election? And I said, yeah, I voted for him. Oh, my gosh. It was as if I fired a gun at her. She wouldn't talk to me for the longest time. Recently, and only very recently, this was over a year ago, but recently she started talking to me again, said, I didn't like that you voted for Trump, but I realized you really are a nice guy. I know. The media would have you to believe that Republicans and conservatives and people of faith are nothing but a bunch of ogres and monsters with BO and hairy underarms that want to shoot everybody and the right to keep and bear arms and homeschool all their children and believe in black helicopters flying over Montana. Yeah, we're a bunch of kooks. No. We're average citizens just like everybody else that are tired of our rights being trampled on. 8 years of Obama, the deficit increased more than any other time in human history of the United States. The healthcare thing was totally screwed up, jacked up, worse than it's ever been under his leadership and the passing of the Affordable Health Care Act. Racism increased 100% plus over his 8-year leadership. His own hometown, Illinois, Chicago, saw the most highest murders of black-on-black violence while he was president than at any other time of history. Many blacks I work with even came to the realization, he don't know nothing for us. You got that right, sisters. He didn't. The Democrats are all about pomp and circumstance, and they talk and talk and talk. They tax you. They lie to you. They strip you of your rights. They tell you they're going to give you affordable health care, and then when you get the fine print down and the thing is passed, and a woman stands up, Nancy Pelosi, and says, let's get this thing passed so we can see what's in it, which underscores the fact that politicians never read the bill they're voting on. And then people wake up the very next day and find out that an HMO now costs triple. And they'd get no office visits, no preventatives, no meds, nothing. Why there wasn't an outcry that was so loud from the left and the right to say, hey, this isn't right. They should have stormed the White House. And when I say stormed, I don't mean violent or vandalistically, but said, Barack, you lied to us. Give us the health care that the politicians have, or shut up. We don't mind a modest tax increase to afford a universal health care where we can go to the mile, we can have the best. Our politicians are a joke, and I would say it to their faces. They vote themselves a raise. And they don't care about you and me at all. They care about getting reelected to line their coffers. They're elitists. They're the establishment. Washington is a good old boys club. Many of the Democrats and Republicans fighting in the House and Senate go out and have a beer together afterwards. It's all sleight of hand. It's all smoke and mirrors. Because really, a lot of them are the same. Politics as usual. They're not looking out for the good of America. My biggest thing for America is say, get rid of that damn deficit. Kill it. No country should be in debt. To have national sovereignty and be a power in the world, we should keep our stuff in-house and stop getting in debt and then selling our debt to China. That was dumb. I would say the government refuses to get involved in health care. What we will do is do an investigation of healthcare fraud by the insurance companies and HMOs charging $50 for an aspirin at an emergency room. Hospitals are nonprofit organizations. Why are you gouging people? Why is DME, durable medical equipment, you could buy a walker and it's $600 for a fold-up aluminum walker? Are you freaking serious? It's like the Pentagon. Anything the Pentagon does, the bottom of a chair foot, that's $50. You know, the little glide that sits on the floor, the chrome glide, the ball bearing, and slide up in the chair leg so it doesn't scrape the floor. Because in the wonderful United States, if it's government, we can jack them up and charge them the highest amount because they'll pay for it. Who's overheading this? Who's the one that's overseeing? Say, why are you charging me $50 for a chair glide? I can go down to Grainger and buy these things for way, way, way less. In fact, I'm going to call Grainger and say, guess what? Because your prices are reasonable, I want you to be the contractor for our chair glides. Thank you very much. Go to the private sector. Say, if I see you start to gouge me, I'll cut you off right now. Because the Democrats don't care. It's taxpayer money. Easy come, easy go. When are we going to wake up and realize all this whining about the middle class? I am not middle class. Most of you on my YouTube are not middle class. They're getting kicked in the shorts by these high ball players. I could go on and on. And even though Trump won the election, and I was glad he did, I was shocked. But it renewed my hope that there's still enough thinking people in this country that are tired of the BS, the lies, the fake news. The problem is the drumbeat of the liberal left goes on and on and on and on. CNN reported the other day with the indictment of Russians that this is absolute proof of collusion. Even though the FBI director said there is no evidence, we found nothing that showed that Trump or anybody else on the American side collaborated with any of this. But CNN reported the lie anyway. Wasn't there a law against yellow journalism? There was. Until we came into a problem way back when in early American history. And it was called freedom of the press. Which basically means the press can say anything it wants. If they say something that's liable to another person, that person can take up an individual lawsuit. I would change that Constitution Amendment and say the right to free press to speak the truth. If you are lying and maligning the facts, we will shut you down and pull your license by FCC to operate. Federal Communications Commissions. You either tell the truth or take your ball and go home. The internet is a great place for people to proliferate lies. We have conspiracy theorist group, we have flat earth theory groups, we got all kinds of clowns on the internet. And you have to have something called discernment and sifting skills. As Pilate said to Jesus, what is truth? Well, you need to figure it out. I register Republican not because the Republicans are perfect, but because we're forced to a two-party system. If I could be independent and vote both elections, the primaries and the major one, then fine. Honestly, we need a Pacific party. That's what we need. I don't believe in harassing the LGBT, but I would simply say to them, sorry, we're not granting you marital status. Marriage is defined by a man and a woman as it is in the Bible, and I'm sorry if you don't agree with that. You're going to do whatever you want to do. I get that. The Supreme Court of the land forbade any state from forbidding it. And I'm going to tell you something, that virtually every woman I know that married a woman is hostile to Pacific Ocean. They're just haters of men. The porno industry glorifies the whole lesbian experience. It makes them look like they're sweeter, more erotic lovers than a man and a woman, and it's true. Many men are cavemen. They get a boner, they go into the girl, they ram her like a jackhammer, release their cum into her cum bank, and they walk off or roll off and go to bed. Truth be told, most men are not good lovers. But two emotionally driven women involving themselves to each other in a marital relationship, somebody's going to become the male testosterone and somebody's going to be the submissive. All of the stuff that we see is a lie. Pornography is a lie. They airbrush these women. They hide the flaws. I've been with enough women. I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little blunt here because Hollywood doesn't talk about this, but there's a commercial here on 95.7 and all the Denver rock stations. Are you tired of unwanted hair? I got news for you, men. There's a lot of women with hair that grows out of their nipples. The long, coarse, black, steel wool, wiry ones. They don't do a good job shaving, and there's a row of stubble here that they missed. I remember meeting Filipinas that have a mole, and one had 3 of those coarse 2 inches of wire black hair. And every time I'm looking her in the face, well, it's right here. I'm thinking, my gosh, get the tweezers and pull those bad boys. I didn't say that. I hate to say it, folks, but every one of us has to shower and shave and maintenance our bodies. And if you looked at porn long enough, you'll start to notice that the color of the white women is not natural. The lady of the house was watching a show. It showed a bunch of flaky, fluty, blondie, big-boobed American women. And they had this little sprayer, and they were spraying on the foundation all over their arms, armpits, chest. And they were flaky. This is great. I really love this. I'm like, yeah, you all look even faker now. Foundation is gross. It's more of an orangey. Women cannot accept themselves. The porn industry promotes a lie. No woman looks that beautiful unless they maintain. And truth be told, that some of the most best-looking women I've ever seen that don't have to fight so hard to maintain and keep it are the Asian gals. The Asian gals tend to have a better diet. They tend to stay away from the stuff that ages us faster. And their bodies in their humid environment is just good for them. So what is the best place in the United States to live? I honestly don't know. That's subjective. It depends on you. It depends on me. It depends on her. And they. Everybody has their preference. And I've lived long enough and I've learned long enough in the last few years that even if I were to move to the Philippines, I'm talking to a lady now in Manila. She's a domestic helper for a well-off family. She'll be talking to me on Skype, and I hear outside the window somebody yelling, "Walla!" I'm like, what are they? Oh, it's the man. He sell this. Then you hear the horns, and then you hear this, and then you hear the barking dog, and then you hear the cat going, "Wow!" Like, that would get on your nerves, Pacific. You don't like all that noise. Every place has its problems. Every place. You heard it first here. This is Pacific Ocean